Hey everybody, welcome to Cinema Trip Reviews. Today on the show we're going to be talking about Resident Evil on Netflix.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Hey everybody, welcome to Cinema Trip Reviews. I'm Wyatt, and today we're going to be talking about the Resident Evil Netflix show that came out about a week or two ago on Netflix. About 8 episodes long, about 50 minutes to an hour long each, even though it felt way longer than that with how paced this show is. Before we get into the actual show itself, I just want to say I'm a huge Resident Evil fan. I grew up playing all of the games, and I've continued to be a huge fan. I've recently gone back and played a lot of not only the main games, but even like Code Veronica and some of the spin-offs as well. But I'm a huge fan of Resident Evil. Not so much of the adaptions that we've seen so far. A lot of people kind of, I guess you want to say, hold the movies to a somewhat entertaining regard or a high regard. I myself don't like the movies at all. A lot of people hold them to kind of an entertaining or a popcorn movie, as a lot of people would call it, but I just think it's just schlocky garbage that just, you kind of try to use the characters from the games, but use them completely wrong, and it turns out to be a huge mess. The movies are just complete garbage. They tried to go in a right direction with Welcome to Raccoon City, the first movie, an adaptation that didn't have Mila Jovovich, and I believe it was Paul W.S. Anderson directing. It was kind of a step in the right direction. You actually adapt the first 2 games. It did feel really cheap, and the characters, it didn't seem like they knew their personalities or what to do with them. It was okay. I would say it was probably one of the better adaptations. I think it was somewhat better than a lot of the Mila Jovovich movies. I only really kind of enjoy the first one. If I actually watch any of the movies, I'll actually rewatch that original one, even though it doesn't really have much to do with the games, other than have a couple of the monsters and the zombies in it, but an Umbrella. But I didn't really know what to expect out of this Netflix series. I didn't have high expectations, that's for sure. Any Resident Evil adaptation or video game adaptation in general, you gotta go into with low expectations. Now, before I watched this show, the only things I really knew about it was Lance Reddick playing Albert Wesker, which had a lot of controversy around it because, as a lot of people know, Albert Wesker, Lance Reddick isn't anything like Albert Wesker, but he actually turned out to be probably my favorite part of the show. If I had to say I had one, he was the one that kind of kept me in it. If anybody that follows us on Twitter, I posted like, when a Resident Evil adaptation has you rooting for Umbrella, you know you done fucked up somewhere. Because I was actively rooting for Umbrella in this whole thing, not only because of Lance Reddick's Albert Wesker, who he's not even really that much of a villain in the show, as much as they try to make him to be one, even though he is a villain in the series. I just hated the characters. And as a lot of people made show because it was getting review bombed. I don't know where some of these media outlets are getting these high review scores, maybe because they try to do something different. But I just did not like this show at all. The name Resident Evil was on it. I wanted to see where it goes with this. There's certain Easter eggs throughout the whole thing. They had a promise was, it's going to connect with the games. It's within the same lore and history of the video games, and it's all going to connect. Where in reality, when you watch the damn series, it only connects in certain areas. They mentioned the original Raccoon City incident in the 90s, which was the first outbreak where Umbrella and the government covered it up. They nuked the whole city and destroyed it. They covered that up. And then all these years later, and they say in 2022, the second outbreak occurred. And then it jumps like 14 or 15 years later. And the series takes place in two separate timelines. It takes place in 2022 at the start of the new outbreak. And then it takes place in like 2030 something. After all these cities are crumbled, it's a post-apocalyptic world, and you're following the adult character, the Jade, who is the main character of the show, you follow her as a kid with her sister and Lance Reddick as Albert Wesker, and then you follow her as an adult once the apocalypse has happened. Either way, I hate this character so fucking much. I just want to make a note to anybody that's writing screenplays or writing TV shows or writing movies. If you're gonna make a TV show that goes 8 episodes and you want to make a character that you want to follow, you're gonna want to write a character that viewers are going to want to follow and that they're going to want to care about throughout this series. Whereas in this one, I don't give a fuck what happens to Jade. I don't care what happens to Billie, because they're the worst. They're the worst characters, not only in Resident Evil history, but probably in TV history, because they're the most unlikable main characters ever. Jade, who's constantly an asshole to everybody. The first time you even see her, she's an asshole to her dad, who's Albert Wesker. And obviously, as viewers, you know who Albert Wesker is. But as a kid, she's just an asshole to her parents. And then she's not only an asshole to her dad, but she's an asshole to every single person she interacts with, including her sister, who she says she so cares about. And even throughout the series here, you're going back and forth between the two timelines. You run into, spoiler, by the way, this is spoilers. You run into adult Billie, her sister, later in the series, and there's 2 times in this series, Billie, as a kid and as an adult, calls Jade out for being a selfish asshole and only caring about herself. And not only that, but she's the reason most of this shit happens. She's the reason all this bad shit and most of these characters in this show die. Like, why would you want to follow a character like that? You don't have to make them extremely likable either. You just have to do enough that makes you want to follow them and enough that you care about what happens to them. Jade almost dies multiple times throughout these 8 episodes. And I was hoping she did every single time. Because I do not care about this character. I don't care about Billie. I don't care about the head of Umbrella who's making Albert Wesker work for her. I just don't care about any of these characters. And you're like, well, Wyatt, if you don't care about these characters, why would you sit through 8 episodes of a TV show? That's a good question. I don't even know myself. It's probably because it's the Resident Evil name, to be honest. And I was interested in to see where some of these characters went. And just when I was losing interest and I was ready to quit, they would throw something into it that would kind of draw me back in. I'm like, all right, I kind of want to see where this goes. But not because of the characters. None of it was really about the characters. It was more about the Resident Evil lore itself that was kind of drawing me in, if that makes any sense. And one of the standouts in this, and it's such a small scene, is whenever Billie and Jade, they find out that their dad isn't really who isn't the guy they thought he was. They find out that Umbrella was really covering up all of these things, because Jade was in contact with a conspiracy theorist who knew about all this stuff Umbrella was doing. They find a secret lab, because there's always a secret lab in Resident Evil, whether the video game, movies, whatever adaptation. There's always a secret lab. The only thing they really missed was the countdown timer for an explosion at the end of one of the episodes, like the games. But they find this box with these videotapes in it in the secret lab, and you actually get a tape where it's you actually get to see it. It's like Albert Wesker and some of the Umbrella troops going in this dark prison, it looks like, and they open up this thing, and you see Lisa Trevor, who you also see in the original game, and you also see in the Welcome to Raccoon City movie. But you actually see a glimpse of Lisa Trevor on one of the videotapes, and the effects with Lisa Trevor weren't that great, but it was really cool seeing something like that in this, where you don't really get to see anything like that in the rest of the show. I mean, you see a video of the nuke going off, blowing up the original Raccoon City. But other than that, you get a lot of just throwaway lines and stuff too. They mentioned the original Albert Wesker died in a volcano. Okay, well that happened at the end of RE5. But they don't go any deeper into that at all. And it goes into a lot of different things. I mean, Wesker has clones, which are from the game. Goes into this movie, you find out there's multiple clones of Wesker, including I'm guessing the original Wesker, which pretty much is a Blade clone. I mean, Lance Reddick looks just like a great value Wesley Snipes Blade, and you only get to see him in like that one scene. Really, this show rubbed me the wrong way completely, and it promised like you're gonna see a lot of cool monsters and zombies and stuff, where it's like the monsters and zombies and stuff really take a back seat in this whole show. Most of the show is just a teenage CW drama mixed with some Resident Evil stuff plotted throughout, but most of it's just terrible writing, weird just choices of music throughout the whole thing. It's just like these really airy, like poppy songs throughout certain bits and pieces, which just don't really fit tonally with the show at all. And then it just mixed with these fucking terrible characters. The only person I really like is Albert Wesker, which they didn't really go full evil with him in this one. He was just kind of being used by Umbrella this whole time. And I didn't mention where they're at in the 2022 part of the show is they're in New Raccoon City, which was built, I believe, in Africa. And it's just one big community, central community built by Umbrella, and right dab in the middle is the Umbrella Corporation, science lab and facility. And all of this starts off is because Billie goes and visits, goes with her dad to work one day and sees rabbits in there, and they promise that Umbrella doesn't do animal testing. And she's like, oh, they secretly are doing animal testing. I kind of want to go in and check it out. And of course her sister encourages her. They go in, and she uses his card to open up a kennel with one of the mutated dogs you see from the games and the movies, which bites Billie. And that kind of sets off the chain of events, what's going forward through the rest of the game. But mind you, when they go into the Umbrella facility late in the dead of night, there's no security. They just walk right in pretty much. Even though earlier in the show, they show you they have to do a facial scan and a voice scan just to get into the building. Well, they just use the voice scan for them to get in. It's pretty convenient. It's lazy writing. The acting was okay at best. The best one was obviously Lance Reddick and a couple of the other characters, but it was terrible writing. If this show would have been called something else other than Resident Evil, it might have worked out better. But even so, you still wouldn't solve the problem with the terrible characters and how bad they are. And that's my biggest complaint. How are you going to create a show with characters you hate and you don't you don't care what happens to them at all? And that's the biggest thing. And to kind of go to what Resident Evil is known for is the monsters. We'll get into the monsters here. You get zombies. You get some zombies. You get them throughout a couple episodes of the series. They're not a huge focal point. They call them zeros in the show. You only see the zombies in the future part of the story with adult Jade. You only get the zombies there, and she's trying to find the cure for the zombies because she's a scientist now, following in her dad's footsteps. Don't really get too many cool scenes with the zombies, really. And a couple of the other monsters, like the dog, I think the dog was done well. It looked better than the actual dogs in the Welcome to Raccoon City movie. But you don't really get to see too much of those. The liquors were a big part of the advertising for this, but you only get them in one episode. You only get the liquors in one episode, and you don't really get to see them for too long. And I also agree. I think they looked a lot better in this show than they did in damn near any of the movie adaptions. They looked really good in this show, and it might be because they were really in a darkened area, and you really got to see them by flashlights. But that's a positive. They actually looked really well, but you don't even get to see them that long. They kill a couple people, and that's about it. You move on from that point. And they were actually a big focal point of the marketing, which is odd. Something I wasn't expecting in the show, you get the chainsaw man. The chainsaw, it's not even a Majini, I guess. It's just a person with a sack on his head holding a chainsaw. But they could have done the design of that a lot better. It's just a potato sack with two black holes, with two black rings around the eyes. They could have designed it a lot better than that, I thought. And you get an introduction of like a queen type zombie that can like control the other zombies and tell them what to do, because some of these like this like group underground is using these zombies to like power the electric for the facility and stuff, which is an all right idea, I guess. The execution was so poor with a lot of this, with damn near everything in the show. And a couple of the other monsters I'm going to get to here, as you only get to see in the last 2 episodes. You also get a spider, one of the big ass spiders that you see in like the original games. Once again, just like the Lickers, you only get a small scene with them in, but it was kind of a cool scene. Wished you would have got to see more of that. You get a humongous giant alligator, which was helped created by Jade, even though she was so against what Umbrella was doing and her dad was doing with testing on humans and these zombies and doing all this and that. But she helped develop this huge mutated fucking crocodile or alligator or whatever. Like, come on now. And then she lets that loose, ends up getting blown up and stuff. But you get a gigantic like worm at the beginning, like the first episode. You get a huge giant worm. You only see that in the one episode, and then my guess is it's just the setup for the next season, which I hope there's not a second season for this show, because I really don't want to watch it to have to review it again. But the tyrant is in this show. The head of Umbrella shows our Wesker the project that they were working on, and it's just this, looks just like the game. It's just this big tank of water with a floating body in it, and it's a tyrant. You could tell it's all deformed. It's got the huge nails, got the extended arm and everything. And it wakes up in the last episode, and you're like, oh shit, it's gonna bust out, it's gonna tear some people up. Nope, it doesn't. The Umbrella facility blows up at the end, and right before the last couple scenes before you go to the credits on the last episode, as Umbrella's kind of going through the rubble and the scientists are going through the rubble looking for stuff, you see his hand pop out of the rubble, which I guess is a setup for season 2, which I hope there isn't one. Another setup for season 2, our Wesker, before he ends up getting killed, before one of his clones takes the kids away, he hands Jade a note that says, contact this person, you'll be okay. And the note says Ada Wong, and it has her address and everything. So in the next season, you're going to be getting Ada Wong probably, who's a character from the original game. Out of all the characters from the original games you're actually going to introduce into the show, you're going to bring Ada Wong? Ada Wong out of all the characters? Like, come on now. I don't understand it. I don't understand why. I just don't understand why they took it in this direction. Like, I understand you want to do something new, but the whole argument that from the fans and the Resident Evil community was like, okay, the original movies, they tried to use the characters from the games, but they were using them all the wrong way, and it was just a cheesy, schlocky action mess. And then you get to the Welcome to Raccoon City movie, where it's like, okay, you're actually adapting the first 2 games. You got the Spencer Mansion, and you got the police station, the Raccoon City PD police station. And you actually have the characters from the game. Some of them don't really look like the game, and they certainly don't act like they're characters from the game. But you mash both games together into one movie where it just feels bloated and rushed. And it's just a mess for just many other different reasons, and it looks cheap and feels cheap. Where I know it sounds nitpicky, but these are a lot of fair criticisms, especially if you're going to adapt a Resident Evil game or into a movie or a TV show. And it really shouldn't be this hard. You have the blueprint right there with the video games. It shouldn't be hard to adapt. Make a movie based off the first game alone. That's it. Make a TV show based off of the first game, and then the second season will be the second game or something. You could easily do that. It shouldn't be this hard. You shouldn't have to create some crazy story where it's like, oh, it's a whole nother second Raccoon City incident where the same damn thing happened again. And then you go back and forth between these 2 different timelines where it just doesn't make sense to do that. Where the most interesting aspect of the show, even though it was the most interesting aspect of the show was the 2022 storyline with, you know, young Billie and Jade and Albert Wesker. That was the most interesting part of the show, even though you hated the characters. The future stuff, it didn't do anything for me, even though that's where you get the zombies and monsters and stuff. I mean, you get the dogs and stuff in the 2022 timeline, but you get all the other monsters in the future one. But even though you get the monsters in that, that's still the least interesting aspect of the show to me. The biggest thing I can't get over is how they did these characters. I could not believe why they would make these characters so unlikable. Because you could even chalk it up to, oh, she's just a girl, she's immature, such and such. But then you jump all these years later, and Jade is still that same person. She didn't grow at all. She's still the same person. She's an asshole to everybody. She constantly fucks everything up and gets everybody killed. She only cares about herself. She even puts her child and her husband or significant other in jeopardy by bringing a fucking zombie on board of their ship where they're pretty much living out in the middle of the ocean, just to experiment on it, and then almost gets her daughter killed, and it gets her other co-scientist, her friend, killed. Like, there's no development in this character at all between these two timelines. Whereas, yeah, I guess you can chalk it up to immaturity as a kid in this, but even so, no kid is an asshole 100% of the time. It just doesn't happen. And I just don't understand why they did it that way. And it was just terrible writing. If they do a season 2, which I don't know if it's looking like that, because the reception by the viewers is terrible right now. Somehow the critics are giving it decent reviews. I don't know what they're seeing. Maybe it's just because it's something new and it's exciting to them. I don't know. But as far as Resident Evil fans are concerned, this is one of the worst attempts at adapting Resident Evil so far. And will I watch a season 2? I might check it out just to see what direction they're trying to go with, and maybe I can just do a review of it on here. But the person, the showrunner of the show, says that he would like to do Lady Dimitrescu in the next season, where it's like, how the fuck would you even incorporate her into this at all? Not only does she get killed in the Resident Evil Village game, so you would have to have it set you'd have to have that set before, but you're going to pull her out of the village and put her into the show, or you're actually going to go to the village and show her? And that right there is a huge other red flag for the season 2 if that actually happens. So no, I am not excited for a season 2. I do not hope it happens. I would look forward to a sequel to Welcome to Raccoon City over a season 2 of this show. But I would be even more so in front of making it a straight up adaptation of the video games themselves. I would be all for that. But I just not on board for this show all around. Some of the monsters were cool. They looked all right. They weren't used enough. The zombies weren't used enough. The writing was terrible. The characters were terrible. The only reason I really stuck around was just to see the Resident Evil lore and Easter eggs and try to see how it all connected, where it really didn't. So, and I usually don't try to shit on, on movies or whatever that I review, but it's really hard not to with this, because this show is a pretty big pile of shit.
That is one big pile of shit.
Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and make sure to go check out all the content across the Cinema Trip Reviews and Waves 5 Media channel. Make sure to go follow us on Twitter at Waves 5 Media, and we'll see everybody next time for the next review.